Yeah. Okay. Oh yeah, I see. Got it. All right. Well, welcome everyone to my mini workshop about being creative with data. And thanks very much for the invitation, Andrea. I think we met back at World, if I'm correct, and talked after that. I'll briefly introduce myself because I don't want to spend too much time on that. Let's see. Oh wait, now I need to make sure that it's here. Yeah. So I started my career as a front-end developer, so really building websites. After that, I sort of became a web analyst by accident. People were just there was an open vacancy within the company I was working in, and people thought maybe you find it interesting. Never thought about being a data analyst or web analyst, but I just thought, let's be open, talk about it, and see where this ends up. And I became a web analyst after that. I've worked in digital marketing as an analyst for about 8 years. And about a year ago, I made the switch to business analytics in the public sector. So now I work in the public sector in the Netherlands, so as a public servant. And besides that, I'm also an exploratory programmer. So I'm just someone who really likes to explore ideas. And I normally do that using some sort of technique. And they're both fun, but also an excuse for me to develop my skills in any direction that I want. And today is really about hanging out with ideas and having fun with your skills. Because it's about being creative with data. And I don't mean like the wrong kind of creativity with data, where you tweak the numbers until they show you the message that you want them to show, but about the fun side of being creative with data. So creating something that is nice to look at. So there'll be four sections in today's session. The first part will be a story about how I stumbled into data art, because I didn't roll into data art on purpose. I just happened to do so by accident. I'll share some details of being creative with data, how I use the data art project that I made. Also dive briefly into what I think is open data art. And then we're going to try and create a data art piece together, which should be a lot of fun, I think. So let's start with the story, how I stumbled into data art. And my story starts on April 20th, 2018. And this is the day that Avicii died. And Avicii was an artist that I really liked. And it was the first time that an artist died that I really felt it. I also just watched his documentary, which ends on quite a positive note. And I watched it a week before. And of course, the time in the real world wasn't really like a week between those two moments. But it just felt really weird that he decided that he wanted to make music, not perform. So he breaks bonds with the manager. And then a week later, I hear that he decided to kill himself. I didn't really get that. And to give you an impression of why I like Avicii, I'll show you a video of a performance of him in Ultra Miami 2013. And hopefully this works. Not really, but then I can just talk about the performance. But back in 2013, Avicii was the headliner at Ultra Miami, and Ultra Miami is this big electronic dance music festival in the US. It's between the big apartment buildings in or the skyscrapers in Miami. And he was the main act on the main stage. So he was the last DJ to perform. And a lot of the music is really loud and hard. But you probably know the song Wake Me Up. It has guitars in it and stuff like that. So he invited a band to the main stage and performed like all his new music at the end of like a really big dance festival, which was, people weren't really happy back then when he did that, I believe. But I really liked that he did that, and I really liked his new sound. So that was really the moment that I started enjoying his music more than I did before. So I thought, why not see if I can blend my skills as a data analyst with the music that he released back then. So that was the album True with the song Wake Me Up on it, and Hey Brother. Stories with, for example, Broken Arrows, which is also quite a famous song. And he had his EP with 6 songs on it, which is the Avicii EP you see on the right. And I started out with his lyrics because Avicii is really involved with his lyrics as well, and writing the lyrics. And I had a new technology I wanted to try out, natural language processing. And natural language processing, it might sound quite complicated, but it's actually pretty easy. I normally say that it's what we use to help a machine understand the human language. So when I talk to a computer, it needs to understand what I say. So a good example are the voice assistants we all have on our phones these days. So if I say, hey Siri, I can ask Siri something and I don't have to program that to Siri. So if I say, hey Siri, what's the weather like? Siri knows that, okay, he's talking about the weather at his location at the time that it is right now. I don't have to tell Siri that because it's inferred from the question that I asked. Another question I can ask is, hey Siri, how tall is the Eiffel Tower? If you're interested, it's 324 meters. I can also ask Siri, how tall is the White House? It's 21 meters. But it gets a bit more difficult with voice assistants if you ask them, hey Siri, what's the difference in height between those two buildings I just mentioned? They're normally like, I can't answer that question. There are some prototypes that do this. The difference is 303 meters if you're interested. So as a human, it's a bit easier to do that, but there are still some challenges here. Another thing that I really like about the current tech climate are the cloud services. So Microsoft, Amazon, Google, they all provide cloud services. And what they do is, on this page, you see a brief animation of cloud services that Google provides. They basically deconstruct everything that they make, and they make it freely accessible to anyone to use. So there's databases in here, data analysis, app building tools. Even I saw healthcare and life sciences. That's something new for me. Also a bit scary maybe that Google is doing that, but also natural language processing and a lot of other stuff. So there's a lot of cool tools you can use. And if you're using them for personal projects, so they are generally on a bit of a smaller scale, they're even free to use. So that's pretty cool. You need a Google account, of course, but I think that's pretty nice. So I ended up using the natural language API because I was looking at lyrics. And a subsection of that is, allows you to do what is called sentiment analysis. And sentiment analysis allows you to extract sentiment from text. So if you look at the line, this is a t-shirt, you can pretty easily state that that's a neutral line, right? It's not saying anything about the t-shirt. It's just saying that it's there. This line, I hate this t-shirt, is probably negative. So it's more on the negative side of the scale. I love this t-shirt is positive because I like it. And you could also say that I really love this amazing t-shirt is more expressive than I love this t-shirt. So that has a higher magnitude when I look at the data. So they call that the magnitude, the force behind the expression of the line. And I can write some code, and on the background is way more code than this, but it allows me to pretty easily analyze this text. So when I call a function called get sentiment from text, I can put any text in there that I want. So in this example, it's some text to analyze, and it gives me the data back, which is pretty easy. It takes some effort to set up, but then if you have it set up, it's pretty easy to get the data. But it gets a bit more complicated when we start looking at Avicii's lyrics. So I want to do a brief test. I see there are, Andrea, besides you, two other people. So
yes, Carrie and Mickey. Hi, Mickey. Hi, Carrie.
So I don't know what's the easiest way to interact here, if it's with mic or with reactions or stuff. But let's see. Feeling my way through the darkness. If we look at this line of text, would we say that it's positive or neutral or a negative piece of text? Maybe, Mikey, what do you think?
Mickey, could you understand the question?
You mean, what do I feel? Is it positive or negative when I see this word?
Yeah.
Reading this word?
Yeah, this line, the feeling my way through the dark. Would you say it's positive or negative or maybe neutral?
Neutral to me is neutral.
Yeah.
For Carrie, it's positive.
Okay, and Andrea, for you?
I would say positive, going towards positive.
All right. Well, the algorithm says it's positive. So two people agree, one person doesn't agree. So we're not fully aligned with Google here. So that's interesting. Then another line, these are the days that we'll talk about. We can also do it in chat, and then Andrea, you share the results of the chat.
Okay. What do you feel, Carrie and Mickey? Positive, negative, right? The same question.
Yeah.
Mickey, neutral again. Carrie, this sentence, the new sentence, neutral. Two neutrals. For me, it's still positive. I love memories.
Yeah. The algorithm thinks it's also positive. It's less positive than the other one, which is interesting. Because I would also, for me, it would also mean these are the days that we'll talk about. So these are days that we had good times, right? So, and then another one, it's probably easy, I think. I caught the edge of a knife and it hurts just a little. Let's see. What do we think?
Mickey, Carrie, just put it in the chat. Mickey says positive. And I think Carrie also positive.
Positive? Oh, interesting. And you,
I
Andrea?
would have said negative for this one, yeah.
Yeah, me too. And the algorithm says it as well, but yeah, maybe I think if you turn it in the positive direction, you hit yourself with a knife, you cut yourself, but it only hurts a little. So in the framing of cutting yourself with a knife, it's positive. So I sort of get that as well. So if I use data visualization, I can plot this result in a scatter plot. So here you see a plot of the 3 lines that we just discussed. And you see a sort of spatial relationship between the 3 songs of the 3 lines, right? So you see the 3 dots in a place appearing. But let's continue with another line. I think this one is also pretty interesting to discuss. I think I just died and went to heaven. So what do you think? Is it positive, neutral, negative?
Positive, I think. For Carrie, it's also positive. Mickey? Positive. Could be
Everyone's
hell.
positive?
Could be hell.
Well, the algorithm says it's negative. So that made me wonder, like, does Google believe in heaven? I don't know. So let's see if we can figure this out a bit. So I think I just died and went to heaven with a capital H is negative, according to Google. With a lower h, it's positive. That's interesting, right? So if we deconstruct this further, I think I just died. I think we can all agree it's negative all in by itself. I went to heaven is neutral with a capital H. With a lowercase h, it's really positive. So death is again negative. Heaven is positive. Heaven with a capital H is slightly positive. If you combine this stuff, I don't know, it doesn't really make sense anymore. But the lowercase h is way more positive than the uppercase h. So does Google believe in heaven? I don't know, but I think the concept of heaven, the non-religious heaven, is more positive in the Google algorithm than the religious heaven with a capital H, which is interesting, right? Because we use Google all the time, but on the background, this sort of assumptions are in the algorithm.
But that means someone programmed Google to be somehow some ways, right? I mean, the programmers have some control on how Google is doing. I mean, what is the algorithm, right?
Yeah, how sentiment analysis generally works is that you have a lot of text and it's all labeled. So basically, every text needs a label for is this a positive or a negative piece of text, and then it starts looking for how often does this piece of word appear in a positive or negative piece of text. So in this case, I think it's more the general census of what people who use Google think.
They write, or what they write and how they express themselves.
I think searches for capital H heaven maybe include more critical lines or negative lines than the lowercase h. I'm not totally sure how they do it in the background. Of course, that's not totally open to the public as well. But I think it's just interesting that this is just one example, but there are millions of these things, of course, that are all incorporated into the algorithm.
Yeah, Mickey's asking that too. Yeah, what's the difference between capital heaven and small letter heaven?
Yeah, as far as I know, there are some religions that say you have to capitalize it, so that it's for example, the Catholic heaven. But the concept of heaven, of going to a place or feeling like being in heaven, because you can, in Dutch you have a saying, I feel like I'm in the 7th heaven. I don't know where it comes from, but if you're really happy, you could say that you feel like you're in heaven. So also, if you look at the line, I think I just died and went to heaven, it could be considered positive because I think, oh, this was so amazing. I just died and went to heaven. So yeah, but it's interesting, right? It's just a single line and we can talk about it. I think we could fill an hour about this line maybe, but I'll continue with the story. So what we're doing right now is called, you want to say something, Andrea?
No, I wanted to say that I love your passion, so just go on.
What we did right now is a smell test. So it's, yeah, of course, when you wear a t-shirt that you've worn for a couple of days, you do like, oh, this doesn't smell too good. Maybe I should drop it and pull on a new one. But with an algorithm, you can do the same. So when an algorithm produces a result, you look at the result and you go like, where does this come from? Does it make any sense? So a really good example is this plot of ice cream sales and shark attacks. normally when ice cream sales go up, shark attacks also tend to go up, but of course they don't cause one another. It's not that when you buy an ice cream, someone dies by a shark attack. But what the underlying factor behind this is, of course, temperature, because if temperature goes up, you buy more ice creams, you're also likely to go swimming more, and you're more likely to be attacked by sharks. So it's important to know that the correlation, so the relation between those two numbers, doesn't mean that they're causing one another. And that's why smell tests are really important. If you look at the results, you have to sort of check first on a really high level, like, does it make sense what's coming out of this? So we just did an analysis for a few lines, but I can do the same thing for full lyrics of a song. So here you see the song You Make Me, and I turn that into a data point. So on the right, you see that the title of the song is You Make Me, the album is called True, the sentiment is 0.3, and the magnitude is 6.5. So that's again the force behind the expression. So if I do this for all the albums, this is what you get for the first album. So you see sort of how the album looks on a level of sentiment. The second album is a bit more positive than the first one, so the songs sway a bit to the right. But it's again, yeah, an interesting shape, I think. And then the last EP with 6 songs is really balanced. So this is the last release that was, that came out before he died, which is, it's almost like a really abstract butterfly, I think, with 2 dots on the left, 2 on the right, and 2 in the middle. But it's interesting. So let's do a lot of smell tests, but this time we're going to look at a bigger piece of the lyrics. So again, we're going to start with Wake Me Up. So I'll give you maybe 10, 20 seconds to read this through. And then you can again tell me whether you think it's positive, neutral, or negative. So it already gets a bit harder now, right? Because it's a bigger piece of text. But let's see if people can answer in the chat what they think. I can also check if I can open the chat myself. Maybe. Yes, I can.
Now we have 2 negatives. Mickey, positive, negative. Yeah, 3 negatives.
Oh, right. Interesting. So the algorithm says it's neutral. So that's interesting. We are more critically thinking than the algorithm in this one. So maybe it's also, does someone want to share why they think this was negative?
Mickey, you can go first.
Because Google doesn't give me the why, so you only give me the data.
When I read this, it feels like the person is like having a low moment.
Yeah.
He's trying to be positive, try to share his feelings, emotions.
Yeah.
Yeah. So to me, it's negative.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I get that. Yeah, this is also interesting because music is also like the lyrics, but also the sound is really a personal thing, right? So it's not that weird that we disagree with Google. It would be weird if Google could read our minds and always give the good result. Let's do another piece of text. So this is the song Stockholm. I'll again give you about 20 seconds to... So what do we think? You can leave it in the chat. I see 1 positive. Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I wrote negative for me.
Yeah.
For me, it was
Oh,
negative.
I really find this interesting because if I look at this, I'm really like, yeah.
Carrie is also positive. It's very interesting because I would definitely say that like this is like a deeply depressed person, like even the previous one. For me, I'm looking at it and I feel like it's a depressed person trying to find sense in life.
Yeah. Yeah. But I really like this because people really have different perspective on pieces of text. So that's interesting. And that's, I think, also what Google does, right? They blend everything together and then try to come up with a result.
Mickey, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, my interpretation is that, I mean, in a way, I agree with you, Andrea, that maybe he's, or she, right? I mean, regardless, is depressed or something, but the last part, the prose of this lyric seems that he or she is hopeful, there's still faith given the dire constraints or situation he or she is in.
Yeah. But I also, Mickey, maybe you're really also a hopeful person then, because I'm looking at the text like Andrea, and it's like pretty negative, but there is a spark of hope, and as long as basically what you're telling me is that as long as there's a spark of hope, it's positive.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. I like that. It's a good approach in life, I think, to always look at the good side. Yeah. So the algorithm says it's negative, so he's not as positive as Mickey. Maybe Mickey should build a Google algorithm, then the results would be a bit more positive. And let's do one more line. I think this one is easy, but I thought the previous one was easy as well. So I'll again give everyone who's in about 20 seconds to read the text. And if you know the answer, you can leave it in the chat.
Okay, just a quick recap for Simfong, who was joining us just right now. We are analyzing the text according to what we feel after reading it, whether it's positive, negative, or neutral for us. So just put one word after you read it.
So I'm really curious to hear what people think here.
Okay, so we got 1, 2, 3 positive for now. I'm asking Simfong whether for you this text is positive or negative or neutral, if you had time to read it. Positive for him too, so 4 positive.
Yeah, this one is easy, right? I would also say that this one is positive, but after the last one, I thought maybe he's a bit too pushy. I don't know, but I think it's positive. Let's see what the algorithm says. It also says it's positive. It's even the most positive song on the 3 releases back then, so it's really positive. This was. It's also good that it's we all agree on this one. So if we look at the whole discography together, this is the sort of visual representation that you got. But I started talking with people, doing some same of the exercises I did with you, and people were basically telling me, yeah, does it really convey any meaning, the visual that I have here? Because, of course, Google, we don't always agree with Google. Music is more than the lyrics. It's also the sound or maybe the moment, because when I'm at a festival, it's different than when I'm at home listening on a record, maybe, or on my Spotify list. So the answer is basically, does it convey any meaning? Not really. So when I had this plot, I basically had 2 directions I could go into. I could go into the serious data analysis correction or correction direction, so to see if I can get more meaning into in the music. But I really like this sort of visual representation of a discography, which is sort of abstract as well. So I decided to take a creative path with my data analysis skills, which is maybe a weird thing to do because data analysis is often linked to serious business work, KPIs, dashboards, and stuff like that. But it's also a really nice creative profession. So the first thing I did is change the colors to map them to the album covers. So gray for True, pink for Stories, yellow for the Avicii EP. I removed all the plotting stuff, and then I printed that on a t-shirt. So I had my first Avicii t-shirt, which had abstract representation of all his music that I analyzed, which was, I think we're just really happy with. You do still see that it's sort of a graph. If you're someone who's into data viz, it's not that hard to interpret this as a scatter plot. But I liked it nonetheless. I also started thinking, like, what would happen if I would apply this to another artist? So another artist I looked into was Jack Johnson. I don't know if you know him, but he's from Hawaii. He makes easy listening music. But then I started analyzing his lyrics, and it is really a critical thinker, Jack Johnson. So the sounds are really optimistic, but the lyrics are really critical. And also, if you pay close attention to his lyrics, it's often about society and things changing, and maybe we could do things in a better way and stuff like that. So he's not really necessarily a negative person, more of a critical singer, and that's, I think, something that's good. I did the same trick here by applying the colors of the albums, and I tried selling them on a market, a local market. But yeah, I'm already like 20-ish minutes explaining this idea to you. So when I was at the market, I had some T-shirts of some bands. I had Fleetwood Mac, Deathbomb, Jack Johnson, of course, Avicii, stuff like that. But I sold 0 T-shirts because I think, yeah, the market was not ready for machine learning AI-driven T-shirts. So I waited a few months. I just had the idea rest for a while. And then on June 6, 2019, that's about a half a year after I pinned up my first T-shirt, the Tim album came out. So that was his posthumous album. So he was working on an album when he died. And the artists that were working together with him finished the songs. So that album got released. And I first started with a sentiment analysis again, but I had all these T-shirts back home. I turned some into face masks, so that was kind of handy in the past year. But yeah, I was just done with the dots. I had so many dotted T-shirts. It felt a bit gimmicky. So I wanted to do something new. So I started thinking of ways, how can I make this maybe even more creative and sort of let go of the idea that it should mean something as a visual representation, but just looks as something that I like to look at. So one thing I did was I cleaned the whole thing up. So in this case, you have all the songs on the album. So 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way until 12. And I thought of ways of like, how can I connect the dots? And you can do that with a drawing program, but you can also do that with programming. So I wanted to do it with programming with Python because I just like programming. But the first struggle that I had is how to draw a non-sequential line with Matplotlib, because normally when you plot a line graph, they always assume that the dots are in order. And if they're not in order, the library by default says, I can't plot this, they're not in order, wrong, this doesn't work. But there are ways
to need some explanation about the Matplotlib.
Oh yeah, Matplotlib is just a way to visualize data in Python. So it's just something you can load into Python to create plots. So, and the package is called Matplotlib, but it's just something you can use to create a line chart, a bar chart, or whatever. So one thing you could do is just draw custom paths. So I think this is the system that works behind all the bar charts as well. And that allowed me to connect all the dots. So here you see a line being drawn from each dot to another. And you already see an interesting shape appearing. But I thought it was still quite an edgy shape. It's kind of hard. And I wanted to make it a bit more soft. So I started looking for ways how to draw curved lines with Matplotlib, the same package. And there are these things called Bezier curves. And if you look at these 4 data points, I can really easily explain it. Here you see 4 straight points. If you make it into a Bezier curve, the line is curved like this. So the Bezier curve was originally invented by a car designer in France to make smooth lines for car designs. It was never intended back then for me to be used in an artistic Python project, but I do it anyway. So if I apply that to all the songs, this is what you get for the first 4 songs. The song 4 to 7, you see that the line continues at song 4 again. So it stops at song 4 and then continues from that same data point. This is song 7 to 10. You see this really weird abstract shapes, right? And this one is especially interesting because, as you notice, there are 3 data points here. So there's no 4th data point for the line to end at. So I don't know how this calculation works, but it goes off into some place. I don't know. And if I would have known that these were called Bezier curves, my search would have been really easy because I could just Google for the thing I need. But I had no idea that these were called that back then. But if I look at the whole plot altogether, this is the hard lines. I can turn it into curved lines, and this is the result that I get, which is cool, right? It looks like it could be a signature of a person if you look at it. And what I especially like is that there's a sort of T on the left side, and Avicii's real name is Tim. The album name is also called Tim. So I think there was just, when I saw this result, I was like, you can be serious. This looks so nice. So again, I had that one printed on a T-shirt. It's also, I'm wearing that one right now as well. So you know it's a real T-shirt. It's not just Photoshop. But it's just, and I like it because when you meet friends or you go out and you have this T-shirt on and people don't see it as like your own printed T-shirt, I'm sort of happy because then it doesn't really stand out. But I know that I'm wearing an artist that I really like. So it's sort of a personal thing to wear as well. So again, I started discussing my idea with friends and family. And I again had the lure of selling, but this time, instead of going to a physical market, I thought, why not create a website and try to sell it? So I implemented some tracking on my website. I tried to run some ads. I have a background in digital marketing, so I know how to track things. So I thought, okay, I have the ads that don't run on my website. I have my website, and I have my sales channel, which is basically not on my website. So I have control over everything I do in my website. But I want to learn if I sell something on Redbubble, which I don't have control over. So what I do get numbers of sales, but I can't track the full like funnel from A to Z. But I can set up some like measurements for this. So I have ads to run people, get people to my website. They visit my website, they read my content, they click buy, which is actually a click to the Redbubble website. And then they can either buy something or they don't. And I didn't put a lot of money in this, but it was like almost 40 euros, which got me quite a few impressions, quite some visits, reads, and click to buys, but no one bought anything. And I also thought, yeah, I don't really feel like putting a lot of effort in this. Is not what energizes me, and it's a personal project, so I should mainly do what energizes me. And it also felt a bit like making money off the back of one of my favorite artists who died, which doesn't really seem okay to me. So I just dropped the selling part. Another thing that people were talking to me about was data art, and I never heard about the term data art before people started telling me. So I'll give you a few examples of this. Here's Georgia Lupi. She's an artist who uses data basically as a resource. I have a video about this, but I think that doesn't work either. So I'll just continue. I have some pictures as well. So what she did is she created a clothing line, for, I think together with the brand Other Stories. I don't know for sure. And she uses 3 really influential women as a resource for the clothing line. So on the left side, you have Ada Lovelace, one of the first really influential mathematicians. I think she also set up this concept called the loop. I'm not sure. Then in the middle, you see the Mae Jemison, the first African-American astronaut. And on the right, you see Rachel Carson. That's one of the first environmental activists in general, who wrote a lot about the use, I think, of pesticides and stuff like that in agriculture, and how it's really bad for our health. But she basically dove into their data and started using their data as assets to generate this stuff. So on the left side, it's a visual representation of the programming, the code that she wrote, which I think if you look at the clothing, it doesn't really look like programming, but it looks nice, right? In the middle, you see it's a blend of all the experiments that Mae did while she was in space and all the views that she had from space. So every circle you see is a blend of that stuff, which is pretty cool. And on the right side, the visuals, you can't really see them clearly, but you see them a bit on the background, are all explorations of words and themes throughout the book. So it's a sort of visual representation of the whole book, which is also pretty cool. But yeah, my t-shirts are oh yeah, Andrea, you want to ask something?
I wanted to ask whether the patterns on the clothing are created by the analysis or by the lady?
So what basically on the whiteboard on the back, and it would be a bit more clear if the video would play, but you can look it up later maybe. On the background on the whiteboard, you see a bit of the process that she had, but every visual that you see is fully generated by the data of behind the person. So it's not just a shape that she drew. It's all, she drew it, but it's sourced from data. Basically in the same way that the line that I get is always the same, but the line is generated by the data points behind it. So I think it's just really, really cool. Another project is one by Anne Rittler. I think it's called Mosaic Virus. The video won't play, but I have images as well, so that's no problem. But what she did is, what you see here is part of a visual, what do you call it? A video display in a museum, where she basically trained an algorithm. There are AI algorithms as well that can generate images. If they know, if you feed them enough images of flowers, they can generate flowers. So what she did was she fed the algorithm like 10,000 pictures of tulips, so the algorithm could draw a tulip all by itself. But then she linked the drawing of the tulips to the Bitcoin price in real time. So they are drawn by Bitcoin fluctuations. And this is already awesome, but the idea behind it is even more awesome, because back, I think in the 16th or 17th century, in the Netherlands, there was this thing called tulip fever. So tulips were really high priced, basically the same as Bitcoins are these days. The price was almost as high as a building in Amsterdam for one tulip. So that's crazy, right? But that makes the idea even more awesome, because she links the fever from way back to the fever of today. And just to show you that she doesn't just Google for tulip pictures, she made 10,000 tulip pictures herself. So these are all tulip pictures she made and labeled to feed an algorithm, which is, she says also the most work is in the preparation and stuff like that. She worked on this project for a year to just get the pictures. So it's really impressive, right? And what she also says, that was in the video, is that there are a lot of applications for AI and big data and stuff like that. But the exploration part of what this means for society and more the ethical side, it's mostly driven by art. So they see what we can make with it and see what discussions arise when you do that. So art also has a real purpose in this scene. And then the last one, it's from Marit Gijsberg. She is, I knew her from a really small meetup, but she works with data and visualization as well. And this was her graduation project, where the lights you see behind her, they're all generated by literacy data from the Netherlands. So basically, how many people are literate, how many people are not literate, and also what's the impact on certain, for example, job opportunities, whether you're literate or not, or so what's the influence literacy has on certain chances you get in life, which is also, I think, really cool. If you look at the lights, they just look as nice lights, but they are driven by data, which is pretty awesome. So this really made me feel sure that I should focus on personal data art, because I just like to work with the project. I don't know, Mickey, do you have a question? Yes.
Yeah, thanks for noticing, Erik. I'm just curious. Like just now, our friend Maria, right? She did her graduation project using the stats on literate and illiterate folks. I mean, I'm sure she can substantiate the art with the data, but I'm just thinking, how would a layman, a non-person on the street would appreciate it, based on the data? Because I'm just thinking, like, if the folks can't appreciate it, right, then it's quite difficult to relay that the message of communication to them. I'm just curious.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it was also mainly served to trigger people at an exposition, to make to basically the people who read it can also change their behavior based on it. But I think you make a really good point that some of this work is also really hard to understand if you're not literate or data literate. So that's an interesting discussion, I think. Yeah, but I don't have the full answer for you. Sorry. So when I continue with my story, I just decided, okay, I want to focus on personal data art, because one of the things I also notice is when I focus on things that I like. So in this case, I have an algorithm that turns music lyrics into visualizations. And if I focus it on music that I like, the results are generally more fun to work on, but also better. So here's an overview of some of the t-shirts I made for myself currently. So on the left, you see a Avicii t-shirt. And the second one is Deathbomb, Something About Us. I'll explain that one in a bit more detail. The yellow one is Gorillas by the Gorillas, which is more of an outer shape path. So I drew a line on the outside of all the dots that were generated. And on the right is a version of a Marion t-shirt, which is a French DJ. I'll also give an example of another t-shirt of that a bit later on. So by this point, I know I want to focus on making it open and on the data art side. So open data art. So one of the things I started doing was really focus on sharing. So all the code for my project is on GitHub. So if you want to use it, whether you use Python right now or have a friend that uses Python or use Python in the future, it's on there. So if you want to use the project, feel free to do so. And I use WordPress for my website to just create content as well. So I think it's important to, on the one side, write content for technical people, but on the other side, also try to explain it to non-technical people, just to give them a bit of idea of what's possible. So the cool thing is that when I decided to do this, the day after I made my decision to focus on sharing, I got a message from Kylie on LinkedIn. And she basically asked, hey, I have a YouTube channel. It's a bit about Python programming, technology, and science. And I wanted to do a video on Avicii project. Can I use your project as the example? And of course I said yes, right? If someone wants to make a video about your content, it's a big compliment. So she made a video. So if you look Google for, or you, how do you call it? If you YouTube search for Avicii AI project, you find her video. And she also ends with a few artists that she analyzed by herself. And this is a visualization she generated for the Chainsmokers. And the Chainsmokers are also a DJ duo. And their names, yeah, you see an A in this, right? This is, if you don't see an A in this, that's weird, I think, but it's really an A for me. And the DJs' real names are Andrew and Alex. That's just a really big coincidence, but I like the coincidence. But I also had an idea of doing something new with the way I used it on clothing. So I asked I often discuss my ideas with my girlfriend as well, because she's a really good sparring partner, and we thought maybe we can embroider it on a sweater. So she did one test run, her first embroiderment, and then she made this one, which is, yeah, I now have a sweater with a DataVis embroidering on it, and if you look at it, it looks more like a baseball sweater, I think, than a DataVis sweater. But I just really like this. It's pretty cool, and it's unique. No one else has this in the world, so that's pretty fun. Of course, I thanked her by sending her the T-shirt, so she wore it in one of her other videos. So it's spreading across the world. 2 people have it now, so it's going viral, maybe. No.
It's more than one. It's more than one already.
Yeah. But so that was fun. I also ended up giving courses at a local university. But one of the challenges I had, but this is basically about the challenge that I had, but also about the joy of programming. So the process that I use with the students is roughly find the lyrics that you like or a piece of text, turn it into data, visualize it, customize the visualizations, and then put it on a product or share it. But I had to do this for 20 students, and I'm not going to take them through it one by one. But the cool thing about programming is that if it's all code, you can all wrap everything into a function and just call that 20 times. So in this case, I think last time there were 15 students instead of 20, and I generated, I think, 300 assets for everyone in 15 seconds, which is, yeah, just really nice that programming can help you in that way. And students come up with really creative ideas as well. So one of the students wanted to analyze Lord of the Rings. So this is a scene from Lord of the Rings. They're taking the hobbits to Isengard. He basically had the idea. He came to me before he started analyzing that he wanted to analyze either the full movie or a scene. I thought a scene is probably easier. It's fewer data points. So he made a piece of like a text file for each line in that scene. He took that scene as a source, and he wanted to create mountains out of it. Because that's a bit of the landscape of Lord of the Rings. It's a fantasy landscape in New Zealand mostly, but this was the result that he got, and he was kind of disappointed at first because he didn't really see mountains in there. But I thought, well, maybe if you try and color it based on the scene picture, so take a picture of the scene and just start filling all the fields you see in here based on what you see in the picture as well, and then it turned into this, which I think is pretty cool, right? This is sort of, I see it a bit of as a Picasso-esque painting. It's really abstract, but you see a mountain in there, some sky, some sand. I think I never intended it to make something like this, but he did, and that was pretty cool. And there was arrows. That's a good one too. Yeah, you could see arrows in it as well. Yeah, and there's even more like crazy cool shit that I didn't say that, but crazy cool stuff that happened. But I got another message on LinkedIn, and yeah, you can scan it, but basically there was a person looking for a tattoo for a while. She found my project, she liked it so much, and she asked permission to have it tattooed on her body. And I'm like, yeah, of course you can do that. So there's someone in the US right now, another person, it's not the same person as you saw back a few slides back, but she has a tattoo of my project on her skin, which is, I think, the biggest compliment I ever got for any piece of work that I made. And yeah, and this is also thinking back about it, why it's so important to create content for technical people and non-technical people, because yeah, more people can get your idea and maybe get the spark to try something new. And there was someone else recently this year. She also sent me a question, and she basically asked permission to use it for wedding rings. I'm like, I never intended to design wedding rings, but here's a picture where they analyzed their, I think, wedding promises or vows, I don't know what you call it in English, and engraved that inside the ring instead of the date. So I'm now a wedding ring designer and tattoo designer by accident, but that's pretty cool.
That's very cool.
So what I really focus on now is small and open data art. So on the one hand, my data sets are relatively small, especially in today's world of big data, and my projects are open. And I mean both that they're open-ended. I don't know where the project will end up, but also open to use by anyone. So I don't know what people will do with it. But how did we get here? It all started with a question like, what if I blend data analysis with my passion for music? And I gained a lot of new knowledge. The most important thing is there's a happy me, because I learned a lot of stuff that I didn't know before. I also learned that working on this creative side is more fun to me than trying to sell the technology or the visuals, and just a lot of collateral benefits. Also, giving this talk again is a really nice collateral benefit, I think, from the whole project. And when I was reading a book after I was working on the project, I found this quote and I just love it. It says that people did not just embark on the project of inventing the wheel and then completed it according to a timetable. And if you link this to current, like modern day innovation, I think two things are really important. One, people did not embark on the project of inventing the wheel, because if you say we're going to invent the wheel, you already know that the wheel exists, what it is. So you're not really inventing anything. And the other thing is that it's really hard to then complete it according to a timetable. So if I translate this to my project, I not just embark on a project of designing t-shirts and a tattoo and then complete it according to a timetable. I just ask myself a what if question, and then things happen. So that's basically how I stumbled into the world of data art. And I now can give a few more examples of other visualizations, how I approach those. And then in the end, maybe we can try to create something together. So I'll do all the technical stuff, and then we can compare our results to Google. So I go to these examples pretty quickly.
Before you start with the examples, I just shared with you the challenge that we put on the website. As you are already in the workshop, maybe you are interested to participate in it. So if you are signing up for the Global Empowerment Hub, the website of the summit, then we have a challenge that we created with Eriks. So basically you just can enter the challenge, you can do it by yourself, and once you are creating the data, then Erik will analyze it for you, and he can give you some feedback and so and so. So it's worth to check it out. You have the link there. If you need any help, you know where to find me. Just DM me or message me on the website, and let's see what you create. And maybe you can have your own t-shirts or tattoo or ring.
Yeah, maybe if you don't know how to start, by the end, I will generate some assets and put them on the website, so you can download them there and maybe use it as a starting point.
Perfect.
Yeah. So one of the things I like about personal project is a lot of our work is about skills and context, right? We have certain skills and we apply them in a certain context. And when there's an overlap, for example, with the context of the business and your data analysis skill as a data analyst, this is where the cool stuff starts happening. And the more overlap there is, the more fun it gets. But the cool thing about your own project is that it's about your skills and your ID. So you can basically decide to do whatever you want to do. So in my case, it's data analysis and music, and I can just blend the two together as far as I want and in any direction that I want. So let's look at some examples. Briefly about the Avicii t-shirt. I did a really minimalistic color set for the t-shirt. So I basically picked the t-shirt that was available at the store that I printed it in, but the background is a bit aimed to look at a dark gray of the album cover, and the white or the skin tone of the line is pulled also from the album cover. So it's not just a white line or a light colored line, it's a color from the music album. Then Marian, it's a French DJ I briefly discussed already. So when I went to his performance, I went to his first performance in 2013. I think it was his first European tour. He was also, I think, really young back then. But at the end of 2019, I went to his new tour where he did all the visual and audio work for his own tour, which was he's sort of like a super artist in my opinion. And when I analyzed the album, this is the line that I got, but I thought it looked interesting, but it's also a bit, I didn't really felt like doing, how do you call it? Being a good representation of what he represents. But he has really bold colors in his style of the music album. So here you see some of the colors that he uses. And you also see the big live block on the poster. And I remember that he had some like hats with live on it, but I didn't get one. I just remember that it looked something like this. So I blended those two together into this shape, which I think is interesting. It's basically the block from live. There's a line. I decided to make a like really minimalistic shadow on the block. And I also like how the line on the right starts in the block and then goes basically out of it, which for me represents that he really makes music that's not really frameable, in my opinion. Then the Deathbomb example, I already showed you the t-shirt, but yeah, you probably know Deathbomb. They're these really cool robots. Sadly, they retired this year, but I analyzed my favorite song of them, and it's called Something About Us. It has 3 paragraphs, and then I plotted the data and pulled a line between it, and this was the result, which is just a line. It's pretty boring. So I thought maybe I can try something new. So I started like blowing up all the dots to see what would happen. And yeah, if they get to the largest position, you see that they're a bit too big for the frame. So I thought I can either fix that or just use that as a feature. So I put that too big for the plot element in the print as well. So you see that the dot on the left or the circle is cut off, and the really big one is cut off on the top and on the side.
And it's like a helmet.
Yeah, maybe a bit as well. But if you look at it, it's just a nice minimalistic t-shirt, right? But for me, it's driven by my favorite Deathbomb song. So anyone else sees it as a minimalistic t-shirt, but I just see it as my own Deathbomb t-shirt.
Let's do one for Get Lucky.
Yeah, that could be one. Yeah. And then I think this is the last example. It's Dagny. Dagny is a singer from Norway. And she was the, how do you call it, in the pre-show of another Norwegian band I went to. So the opening act, I think is what they call it. And she had an EP out back then with 6 songs. And this was the result that I got from or 5 songs even on it. And I started ways like, what if I would blend this with the logo of the band that came after her? So the band that came after is Le Maître, and they really have this almost origami-like logo. So I thought, what if I would connect all the dots on here together? So in this case, I have this plot, and I connected all the dots, and I thought, this is interesting. This sort of looks like a geometric, like cut diamond, and maybe it's a bit hard for you to see now, but I'll visualize the idea that I had. So the first thing I did, I thought, okay, if this is a cut diamond, I want to generate the other side of the diamond as well. So I expanded the line from 0.3 to 2 to make like a 6 data point. Well, I don't know what did throughout the role is, but maybe you can elaborate a bit, Mickey. I don't know what it is, but I have the chat open so I can read the. Oh yeah. It's a bit of a geometrical shape. So if I color it, it gets a bit more clear, right? And then I played a bit with it and I thought, well, maybe I can design like a new album cover. And this is the result that I got, which I think again looks pretty cool. It's all sourced from the data points and then with some creativity added of myself. So I really like this one as well, because if you look at this, you won't say this is data visualization. You just say this is a graphic design. So that's pretty cool, I think.
It's like a new way of logo design also, no?
Yeah.
Like when you put together the data and then you create logo.
Yeah, if you start investigating the world of data art, it's I feel sorry maybe for real artists. No, I'm just kidding. But but there are some algorithms that just can continuously make things that look nice, which is amazing, I think.
Mickey, we found your niche. You just have to collaborate with Erik.
So maybe a brief note on the technology that I use. This is the tech stack that I currently use for the project, and a lot of it is open source, so you can use it in any way that you want. A lot of other stuff is free to use, so Google Cloud is free to use if you have a Google account. You can use the cloud version of Excel, which is free, or maybe use OpenOffice variants as an alternative. And the only costs are in making the print. I use Redbubble mostly. It's a print-on-demand service, but you can go to a local printing shop as well with your visual. If you just ask them what format do you need it in, you can just provide them. So now I'm talking to a local t-shirt printer to have them printed there. But the only costs are in making a t-shirt, and it's mostly at cost price. So I really like open technology because you can use it flexibly and creatively for whatever need that you see fit. And I think what I just hate is that if a project or a product does too much thinking for me, I just don't like that. I just want to make something and get under the hood and tweak everything. So now we're gonna try to create a piece of data art together and see how that compares to what Google makes. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to analyze songs and analyze the results to Google's results, or compare them. It's basically the same thing that we did like a couple of minutes back, where we took a song and then set positive, neutral, negative. But this time I'm going to register it in my code so I can generate the data art based on what we all say. And we're going to do 6 songs and then see what comes out. So I'll try to make I'm going to make this a bit small. Is it still readable for everyone? Maybe I can zoom in a bit. Oh, that's a bit too much. I think this is readable, right?
Yeah, this is okay. Yes.
It's just nice.
Yeah, and then I'll open my. Oh, this is over. Oh, this is the wrong one. I need this one. Yes. So now you can still read it, and then I'll have the code here. So this is the text for Can't Catch Me. I just pulled 6 random songs that I liked from Avicii. So the order of the dots in this case is just my random selection. It has nothing to do with the release or whatever. So this is going to be unique for today based on what we say and what the results say. So we are with, I think, 5 people. So let's read the text and say whether we think it's positive, neutral, or negative.
I think all positive. Let's see Simfong. And you, Erik, also, right?
Yeah, I'm saying I'm going with negative, I think. Then we have 3 positives and a neutral. All right.
And I will make a bold statement here. Like when we create this data and we visualize it, then I will send everyone the t-shirt.
Nice. All right. So we have 3 positives, 1 neutral, 1 negative. All right. Then we go to the next one. Lay Me Down. I see positive, negative, interest. So this is positive, negative, negative, positive, right? Yeah, so it's 2, and I'm gonna go with positive as well. So that's 3 positives and 2 negatives. Okay. Then the third song, Sunset Jesus. So there's a positive.
Carry and symphony, carry neutral and symphony.
Okay. So there's one negative. I'm also going to go with neutral. And then there's two positives. All right. Then Lonely Together, the fourth one. Oh, this is a really negative song if I look at the results. I think if
I don't know whether symphony has answered.
Neutral.
Neutral, okay.
Yeah, I'm also gonna go with neutral. So we have two neutrals and three negatives, right? And
it changed because first it was all positive. You remember?
Yeah.
When we just showed the first part of the song.
Yeah. So now with the fifth song, Addicted to You. I also really curious to hear what people think about this one. Oh. Very positive. I can't put that in there, but it just counts as positive.
Positive plus plus.
Yeah, okay. I'll give extra points for the positivity of this one. I can do that. It's not, my algorithm is really flexible.
Carrie says positive. Well, she was writing to me in private. So
Okay.
Carrie just changed your messaging to everyone.
So I'm gonna give this one 5 points because Mickey was very positive. So or 6 points. I mean, it's not just 5 but 6. And then it's, you could consider this one a bit. Maybe the person is a bit too addicted to someone, but and let's go to the 6th one, Fades Away. This one is really mixed. So we have 2 negative ones.
Yeah, it's a mix.
A positive one and a neutral one, right?
And you?
Yeah, I'm also going to go with neutral. Yeah. All right. So now we can compare our results with Google, which is fun. I'm really curious. So I'll show you a piece of code now, and it's pretty. I'm just going to show you the easy part. But so what you see here is that I just like listed every song in here with the scores that you gave. So I just summed them all up. So here's +3, neutral 1, -1, and I can run this script basically to turn the results into data. So if I do that, hopefully it works. Yeah. So you already see the data here a bit, but I can show it visually as well. So this is the result that we made, which is so you don't really see the numbers, but this is the song 1, song 2, song 3, song 4, song 5, song 6. Interesting, right? So now I can do the same thing, but then ask Google to analyze the same songs. Is this the right? Yeah. So now it says it's running the analysis for Google. And I can go here and look at Google's results. And it's different, right? So if we...
That's very square.
So this is our result, this is Google's. But now the cool parts are, I think I really like the lines and stuff like that. So I can generate that for both as well. So if I run this script, it starts generating all the visualizations. And I'm curious to see what the Google algorithm. So basically it says it's loading the data and analyzing some stuff. So now you see there's a lot more stuff in here. So let's first look at our results. Like this. Oh, I'm gonna sort it on type. So this is again the lines that we had. So this is the clean version, the dots that get bigger and bigger. This is one of the lines. This is more the explanatory line. It's a pretty cool shape, right? It's nice and closed. I kind of like it.
Will look beautiful on the t-shirt. Let's vote which one you want, guys.
And it's also interesting to see what the Google one says. So let's briefly look at this one as well. So this is the Google one.
Ours is better. Oh, that was nice.
So this is basically us versus Google. I think ours is more perfect because Google's has a bit of a line here at the bottom.
I think ours is more diverse and more dimensional, you know? That's what I think.
More human. More human.
More human. So maybe we could do the t-shirt with the two things next to each other. I don't know.
With both of them.
Yes, like human and robot, or human and digital, something like this, you know?
What I also want to do is make sure that I made a small website I prepared. So now you don't see any images here, but I can pretty easily upload them. So let's see. Wait. Where's the GS crowd? This one. So now I'm uploading them on another screen. Yeah. And then I reload it.
Sifong is saying Google victory 2 fingers.
It's doing like this. Yeah. So on this page you see all the plots that we made. So there's edriessen.com/GEH 2021.
Yeah, maybe you can put it in the comments and then I will.
Oh yeah, that's super smart, Andrea.
Yeah. Let's do that.
So if you go here, you see all the images that we made. I didn't upload Google's images. Maybe I can add those later if people are interested.
Yeah, later it's okay, no problem.
And so here you can basically download these and use the shapes in any way you want. If you're not that familiar with how to use those visualizations, I can maybe briefly demo the tool that I use. It's an open source graphic design tool. I think I can make it in like a few minutes, Andrea, if that's okay.
It's okay for me. I mean, they are all interested. I think Carrie's saying the Google looks like a cactus for me.
Interesting. It's also just really nice how people always find something in the visuals.
No, I think it's nice. It gives a personal touch. I think the interpretation and even the thought behind. When you generate the data, you will be sure that you are creating something for yourself and you interpret it on your own way. So I really love this understand. I hate data normally. I hate Excel sheets. But this way I love data. I want to just be here.
Yeah, well, and I thought I never did this approach with like a group of people that we just did. That was the first time I did it with a crowd. So I really like how that worked out because it works. But I also like it how it's sort of a fingerprint of an algorithm, what you see. So I also notice that when I run the same analysis over time, the shape changes because Google updates their algorithm. So it's a nice visual way to keep track of what they're doing. So that's pretty fun as well. But
we can do this every year then. Check how our data is standing next year in Google.
Yes. But for like graphic design, I use there's this program called Adobe Illustrator. Most people know it, but it's pretty expensive. I use Inkscape. It's free, open source. So when you open Inkscape, you have this this sheet of paper to work on, and there are a few things that are pretty nice to know. And the first one is that whenever let's look at the nice one we had. So this one, I think we all like that. So normally when you have an image, I want to make it a bit bigger. The problem that you have is when you want to make it printed on a t-shirt, for example, it needs to be a really high resolution because else you get like these nasty squares. So if you zoom in, you see that this is not a high resolution, right? It gets blurry. But with programs like Inkscape, also Adobe Illustrator, there are ways to turn those images into vectors. So, and vector graphics are basically, they translate your image into a set of formulas, and that allows you to scale it up indefinitely, like larger or smaller. And in this case, I want to do that because I want to blow it up to print it on a t-shirt, for example. So one of the things you can do is when you select your image, is go to path and then say trace bitmap. And when I hit OK, then this image is traced. So if I select it, you see that we now have two images. If I zoom in on this one, it's still blurry. But if I zoom in on this one, I can zoom in indefinitely. It just stays sharp. You see that?
Yep.
So that's pretty cool. You also notice that the lines are, the width of the lines are a bit changing, but that's basically an algorithm, again, interpreting the contrast of the image. And I also like that because it makes the corners a bit more rounded. So if you look at these, for example, it's a bit more curved. So I'm now going to remove this one. And when I have this one, I can just, for example, change the color into anything that I want. If I want to make it pink, I make it pink. Some other things you could do pretty easily is a technique I use in various formats, is what they call, you can do things based on the overlap that images have. So in this example, I have two squares. And to make it a bit more clear, I give them two different colors. And if you again go to path, you see that there are all sorts of things you could do with those paths. So in this case, I want to say, I want to blend them, and then it becomes one image. Or I want to say, I don't want to blend it, but I want to maybe exclude it. So then it only keeps the parts that are non-overlapping. So there are tons of things you can do with it, but you can also do it with the shape. So if we were to say, I want to put this shape, I want to blend this shape with the shape that we just generated, I have to make sure that I send this thing to the back, because otherwise it will do it in the wrong direction. But there are some options to do that here. So in this case, you see that the pink line is in front of the other line. And now I might want to say, okay, I want to do a difference, and then it only keeps that part. You see it? Mm-hmm. And that's, this is a really basic example, but I used it in various ways. So one of the things you could do, for example, is to, what I like to do as well is to give a bit of direction to the graph, because now you don't really see what the first data point is, what the second data point was. So if you want to do that, you can use these squares as well. Oh, this starts looking really weird. But...
Oh, it's like what is that when you are standing on the sun? Shadow.
But what I tend to do quite a lot is, let's see if I can make this one a bit like this. And then make it white. Send it to the front. I know it's not perfect, but if you do stuff like this on quite a few spots, you get the sort of more of an overlap of the line. So you see that the line is overlapping the other one. And you have to do this at a couple of spots, but it's basically turning it into a vector and playing a bit around with colors. And sometimes I do a bit with shapes. And this tool is all open source. But if you want to use it and you're not sure how to do something, you can drop me a message if you want, and I can see if I can help. But I really like this tool because it's free. It does a lot of stuff that Adobe Illustrator does. So for me, it works really well.
So this is the Inkscape, right?
Yeah, it's called Inkscape. Yeah. I can maybe drop the link as well in the chat.
Yes.
To the tool. Let's see. Oh, here's. Yeah. Yeah, we just did these two things. So now we want to close the workshop. Maybe there's some things are it's a bit much to digest sometimes, but we made something together, which is pretty fun, I think. Let's see. So I want to get back to the quote I shared earlier. So people did not just embark on a project of inventing the wheel and then completed it according to a timetable. And again, translating that to my project, I did not just embark on a project of designing T-shirts and a tattoo and then completed it according to a timetable. It happened by accident. So the most important thing is, I think, if you have an idea, give it time, because I've been working on this project since 2018. I'm still working on it. It's not done. And if you don't actively work on it, you see that your like unconscious or subconscious is still handling the idea, working with it. If you talk with people or read books or watch documentaries or movies, you can get new ideas to blend in your idea. So time and good ideas really go well together. This was the story I wanted to share. If you want to say hi, this is my LinkedIn. I have the project on my website as well as text, so you can just read a bit about the Avicii project. The code is all on GitHub, and today's visuals, they're in the chat, but you can also download them by going to this link. And I'll make sure to add the Google images as well after the session. So you have both the crowd visuals and the Google visuals.
Let's do that. I love diversity. We will show it all. So thank you for those who are watching from YouTube or who will watch this on replay. Please don't forget the challenge from Erik is on the website. So if you would like to join, you have to sign in as a member, and then you will find the data challenge there, and you can create your art, and then we will figure out how Erik can help you to analyze it or how he can support you in this journey. So I will just quickly close the live, and then in the room, Carrie